So, Strafe is a shooter that pays homage to games like Quake and Doom from the mid-90s, but also brings the sensibilities and the things we've learned in the last 20 years to that shooter. We've mixed the core gameplay, the things that make shooters really fun, with the progression and with the elements of a roguelike. This is really setting me off. I'm sorry. So in Strafe, you have a sense of persistence with all the gore. Everything doesn't fade away. Since the levels are constantly changing every time you die, the blood tells you where you've been. It also just looks great. So it's one of the things that we've tried to build gameplay mechanics around, such as there are acid enemies in the game where as they spill their blood, as it paints a wall or a floor, you now have an active hazard to avoid. But if you can kill another enemy and cover up the acid with the blood, you can kind of create safe passage back through there. As you pick your gun at the beginning of the game, it dictates how you play, but then you upgrade that gun as you play, not only statistically, but you'll find these robots inside of machines that you're able to give the gun to, and it'll give it a different firing mode, have it be a secondary or primary, and just change it up for you. But we also have a ton of weapons that are available throughout the game that you'll find on corpses. You pick them up, empty them out, and then you use the weapon itself as a weapon. So hopefully Steve runs into one here soon. Additionally, exploding barrels. Every FPS has exploding barrels, and we absolutely love them. But in our game, we wanted to add another layer to them, so you can pick them up and then throw them at enemies like grenades. But it's a risk-reward. So if you're holding the barrel when you get shot in the face, when it gets shot, you'll blow up in your face and probably kill you. We're trying to focus on the game being around an hour to beat, so you're able to sit down, play a run for 15 minutes, play a run for 20 minutes, but if you can play for an hour, we're trying to get you all the way through the game. But it might take you 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours to get to the point where you're skilled enough to get there. So we're going to show one more level of Icarus. Hopefully we'll be able to find an upgrade machine, maybe hit the merchant shop, and then in doing so, we'll then load up Black Canyon to show you what that looks like. That's the next zone that we're currently in development on. So, for the people inside the trailer, the game plays great loud. There's hot-ass jams that are attached to each level. So, without that, this is just feeling a lot more stale than it should. But in this level, we introduce, key cards. There are multiple, it's not just RGB, collect the card, open the door, but the level might give you a head terminal where you find someone's ID tag on a screen next to the door, and you have to go find their corpse, rip their head off, and escort it back to the door to open it up. So there's an upgrade machine he just saw. He's going to hand this thing his gun, and then it'll take about 5 or 6 seconds to upgrade it for him. He just has to survive. He has his fist he can use in the meantime. Okay, his gun's probably done. So now what that machine changed is you can recognize by the branding after playing for a while that now is secondary. Go back to your shotgun and show the secondary. Instead of being a flak grenade, this specific one changed it to a block of C4. Now, if that C4 takes any damage, it blows up. That allows you to make crazy traps, put it on enemies, do different things with it that can be interesting. As you play through Icarus, you find pieces of a teleporter, and after a few runs, if you escort those pieces to the next zone, you can find a broken teleporter to repair, and you'll unlock a permanent shortcut in the hub so that you can go to the second zone, third zone, and the fourth zone. Jump in. So it's going to hitch right now as it loads. This is because we're in the middle of development on it. There will be no load screens from the beginning to the end of the game when you play Strafe, even when you boot it up. We're trying to figure out streaming and make everything as smooth as possible so that you can just move quickly. So tutorialize how the progression works in this zone. So Icarus is a tight space. It's a ship, the first zone, that's pretty congested. So for the Black Canyon, we take a lot of the ceilings away. We try to have more open environments that you're able to strafe jump around or keep up your momentum. There is a variety in scale, but some of the rooms just become massive. To replace the exploding barrels, we have these beetles crawling along the walls that you can grab off and throw at enemies. And we try to like play with the mechanics we have access to, as well as introducing some new ones. So within this zone, we introduced 2 new enemies, and there'll also be, they're not currently in this build, but there's going to be 2 to 3 additional new gun pickups to discover. So along with the progression, along with the new enemies, there's reskinning of old enemies that we change the stats about them, as well as their behaviors. So they might shoot differently, have more health, things that, you know, make old things fresh again. That's one of the dead enemies. No worries. So if you see like a spidery, muscly, bony enemy, that's one of the new enemies. It's called a harvester. They're kind of like these spiders with 6 legs that live underground, and they have a few different ways to attack the player. Some melee, some digging up rocks and throwing them at you. Yeah. And then another enemy we have in the zone that's brand new is the brick. He hides kind of in these rocks, makes himself look like just a piece of foliage, and when you walk too close or shoot at him, he pops out and just starts pursuing you. We'll see if we can run into one. So to progress through this, since there's, you know, we don't want key cards in this area, you have to, when you find a rock slide, you have to find the nearest crashed escape pod, rip out its fuel source, and escort that to the door to blow it up. But you only have about 15 seconds to do so before it blows up in your hands. But he was able to clear out this space to begin with, and he can continue on. So we also don't have the benches and the food dispensers in this zone until you get to the rooms. So it's a little bit of a gameplay switch. Instead of having these moments you can find within the combat and within the level, it's more of a space at the end where when you see your stats, you can, you know, reflect on them, grab the shit you need, you know, repair yourself, get some shields, get some ammo, or heal yourself up. It's quite simple. But yeah, so for progression, since a lot of our content is randomized, I'd never wanted it to feel like we're just throwing RNG at you. It just feels like this unauthored, like, you know, mess of computer, you know, math. So instead, we worked really hard to give the game a sense of progression, not only by having these welcome rooms or each level having their own song or following a set of rules, but in the example of the Black Canyon here, the first level's always above ground. It changes, all the levels change, all the placement changes, but we use a lot of above ground like spaces. The second level, you're going underground into the caves, there's a lot more acid, there's a lot more darkness. And then when you come back up for the third level, it's in the middle of a rainstorm.